Hi people, it's me, Anja. My pronouns all she and her, and welcome back to my channel for part 5 of my favorite middle grade books featuring black main characters. And also, I wanted to say that I have officially left TikTok now that it's down and that it's full of light propaganda, I've heard. I don't want to be there anymore, so I'm here instead. Anyway, the first book on this list is called The Science of Friendship. This book is a middle-aged contemporary following a young black main character who's trying to quantify friendships, which I think is such a fascinating concept, especially as someone who is autistic and has trouble like maintaining and creating friendships and defining friendships. Like, this book is so good and it's so fantastic. I think this author really did a good job like depicting middle school friendships and characters, and I loved all the interviews and everything. Like, all the characters felt so humanized and honest and transparent, and they felt like real people. I loved the plot and the friendships, obviously, and the family dynamics and everything. This book is so good and it's so fantastic, and I'm so excited to read her next book, which I think came out last fall, but I still haven't gotten my hands on it yet. But anyway, this book was so good and it was so fantastic. So with that said, I would definitely highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Hattie May Begins Again. This story is a middle-grade historical fiction set during the Great Migration of 1938, although I think technically the Great Migration lasted over multiple years. But anyway, it follows a young black main character who's trying to fit in at a new school, and I thought this book was so good and so well done, and I apologize in advance if my review is redundant, because I know I've talked about this book recently. But anyway, this book was so good and so well done. I loved the poetic writing, the setting, the plot, the characters, everything. Like, this book is so fantastic and it's so good. One of my favorite features of historical fiction, and why I've loved it for so long as a genre, is because of how authors historically, no pun intended, tend to humanize their characters so well, especially when it comes to putting them in situations that people still experience today, such as trying to fit in at a new school, in a new environment, like a fish out of water. I thought this book was so fantastic and it was so good. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Boy 2.0. This book is a middle-aged science fiction contemporary following a young black main character who's settling into his new foster family, as well as discovering that he has superpowers, which is so fascinating and so well done. I really appreciated how this book was so character-driven rather than being plot-driven, and I loved the world building and the characters and the family dynamics and everything. I'm so excited to read the sequel, which I think comes out February 24th of this year, and definitely should have been on my February TBR had I been aware of its release date. But anyway, this book was so good and it's so fantastic. I loved every single element of it. I think I had really low expectations prior to going into this book because I don't remember if I've completed anything before by this author, and oftentimes when I've DNF'd everything by an author prior, it usually means that I don't end up enjoying their newest release. So I was pleasantly surprised when I really enjoyed this book, and I think it's so good. I think it's so fantastic. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Figure It Out, Henri Weldon. This story is a middle-grade contemporary following a young black main character who's navigating her newly diagnosed learning disability, as well as family dynamics and friendships. I think this book is so fantastic and it's so good. I've mentioned this previously, but I love reading books about black disabled main characters as someone who is both black and disabled, and it's oftentimes hard to find main characters that are both black and disabled because oftentimes either the side character is the black and disabled one, or oftentimes the main character is disabled but then they're white. So anyway, I digress. This book was so good and it was so well done. I loved the disability representation, as well as the characters and the family dynamics and the friendships and the plot and the writing and everything. This book is so good and it's so fantastic. I love a good, solid, like, coming of age story. I think this book is so underrated and it's so good. I think it's excellent. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The last book on this list, and definitely not the least, is called Ellie Engle Saves Herself. This story is a middle-grade urban fantasy following a young black sapphic main character who gains the ability to bring things back to life. I think this book is so good and it's so well done. First of all, I loved the magic, I loved the queerness, I loved the characters and the family dynamics and the plot and the writing and everything. I think this book is so fantastic and it's so good. And I've said this before, but I think that Leah writes middle grade better than they write YA. And I don't really know if that's a hot take or not, because I don't know how many people who have read her previous YA books have also read this one. And also, like, most people, in my opinion, don't really appreciate middle grade the way that I do. So even if they have also read this book, if they don't read middle grade regularly, honestly, I don't trust their opinion. Anyway, I thought this book was so good and it was so fantastic and I loved every single element of it. I loved the world building and the setting and the plot and the characters and the queerness and everything. Like, this book is so excellent and it's so well done. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. So in conclusion, today is January 26th. So I'm actually not quite sure if TikTok is now up and running by the time this video is public. But if it is full of right propaganda, and if my videos that are pro-LGBT and anti-ICE won't be, like, seen by the public, then there's no point of me being on TikTok. So anyway, with that said, I hope that you are all enjoying my book recommendations, because I will be staying on YouTube and Twitter and Goodreads. So anyway, with that said, if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below the teddy bear emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.